was a mistake. Surely, they had mixed up the address. I went down to the HOA office, expecting a simple misunderstanding to be cleared up. But when I met Janet, the HOA president, it became clear this wasn't going to be an easy fix. She greeted me with a stiff smile and immediately insisted that my driveway didn't match the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. She claimed I hadn't gone through the proper HOA procedures, even though I had city permits and everything in order. When I asked for specifics about the rules I'd allegedly broken, she dismissed them, acting as though the city permits didn't matter. Her tone was sharp, and it was clear she wasn't interested in listening. Days passed, and things escalated quickly. I was slapped with a $150 per day fine for non-compliance. Soon after, I received a cease and desist notice, and my garage was marked with a bright orange sticker warning of impending legal action. I was stunned. This road, the very one my driveway connected to, was used by everyone in the neighborhood, yet I seemed to be the only one targeted. It felt personal. I spoke to some of my neighbors, hoping to get some insight. Most of them were too scared to speak up, giving nervous shrugs or advising me to let it go so I wouldn't become their next target. One neighbor whispered that Janet had a reputation for bullying anyone who didn't toe the line. This was beyond frustrating. I knew I needed to take a stand, but I had no idea why she had singled me out. The stress was taking a toll on me. Every day brought a new notice in my mailbox, and I could hardly sleep. I called the city again, and they confirmed that my permits were valid and that the HOA had no legal right to demand the removal of my driveway. But there was a catch. It turned out the HOA had slipped in a clause requiring approval for visible modifications. I wasn't about to give in, though. This wasn't just about a driveway. It was about principle. That's when I remembered something the real estate agent had mentioned when I bought the house. She'd said that the road in front of my property was privately maintained. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it, but now it felt like a clue I had to follow. I spent hours at the county land records office, flipping through old documents, hoping to find something useful. And then, I found it. An old deed from the 1970s showing that the road my driveway connected to, along with a stretch of road leading into the neighborhood, was privately owned. It was no longer part of the HOA's jurisdiction. The road was mine. I felt a surge of excitement, but I also had to confirm this. I called a real estate lawyer, who confirmed that the road was indeed privately owned by me and that the HOA had no easement or legal authority over it. That gave me all the confidence I needed. I gathered the documents, highlighted the property lines, and calmly sent them, along with a formal cease and desist, to Janet and the HOA board members. 2 days later, Janet knocked on my door, red-faced and furious. Without so much as a greeting, she said, "You can't possibly think this is going to stand." I calmly replied, "You'll have to take it up with the county, it's all legally filed." She didn't say another word but stormed off, leaving skid marks in her wake. I thought that would be the end of it, but Janet wasn't the type to back down easily. That week, the HOA sent another letter claiming I was obstructing a community road and that they were going to take action to clear the obstruction. That was when I decided to take things a step further. Since I owned the road, I put up a sign at the edge of my property saying, "Private road, no HOA access without permission." I also added cameras at both ends of the road. It was a simple but effective way of asserting my rights. The neighborhood was shocked, but the shockwaves hadn't even hit Janet yet. The next HOA meeting was packed, with residents finally voicing their frustrations. For the first time, people weren't afraid to ask questions. Janet, in her usual defensive manner, tried to explain herself, but she couldn't produce a single document proving the HOA had jurisdiction over my road. I had all the facts, and I wasn't backing down. Then, I went even further. I called a few neighbors who had been quietly suffering under the HOA's unreasonable demands for years. We started discussing the possibility of dissolving the HOA. I explained how, with enough community support and a proper vote, it could be done. By the end of the afternoon, I had over 20 signatures, more than half of the neighborhood. People were finally waking up to the truth. Janet, however, wasn't going to let this go easily. She tried to send out a letter claiming my community meeting was unauthorized, but it only fueled the fire. The residents were done being quiet. Soon after, the HOA board dissolved, and the neighborhood was free from the oppressive rules that had haunted it for years. Yet, Janet wasn't finished. She sued me for emotional distress, claiming that I had caused her sleepless nights and public embarrassment. But with all the evidence I had, I knew her lawsuit was frivolous. In the end, the lawsuit was dropped, and Janet moved out of Crestwood Hills, leaving without so much as a goodbye. With the HOA gone, the neighborhood transformed. People began decorating their homes freely. No more fines, no more threats. It felt like a weight had been lifted. I kept the gate at the start of the private road, but now it was open, just a reminder of what we had achieved. Now, as I sip my coffee on the porch, a neighbor walking her dog waves and calls, "Still guarding the kingdom, Road King?" The kids now call it Grandpa's Parkway, and I couldn't be prouder. Sometimes, the best way to protect your peace is to own the road.